that was originally called OSAP that evolved into the program now called ATIP, which is where those videos that we now see, the Go Fast, the gimbal, the FLIR, that was part of our effort, sir.
Right. So you're not some conspiracy theorist. You actually have a legitimate background.
Well, sir, I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist. I'm fact-based, just say facts.
So when you're in this room, I want to paint the picture of everybody. You're in this room, you're by yourself, you're in a skiff, you're handed a document. How long is the document?
It's about a page front and back. So basically you have some things they call trigraphs, which I cannot, again, talk to.
How long were you given to sign the document?
As long as I needed, sir.
And what if you didn't sign it?
Well, I suspect there'd be repercussions. I wouldn't have access to certain information.
Were you allowed to ask a lawyer, or weren't allowed to ask for a lawyer to review the document?
It wasn't an option, but they probably wouldn't have allowed me to, because the document itself was pretty explicit about you have to be, wait, you're putting me in an interest. Let me try to thread the needle here. There are certain documents that we have in the U.S. government that allow people to have access to certain programs, whether it's a special, and I'm going to be very generic here, whether it's a special access program or a controlled access program, SAP, CAP, whatnot.
How many people have to sign that document?
It depends how many people are going to get access to the information, sir.
Okay. Last question. Doctor, real quick, can you tell us about the Omaha incident in greater detail? I've read your background, right? Some people would label you as a member of the deep state, since you worked in government for a long period of time. But can you tell us more about that incident? You've written a lot about that.
I wrote a lot about incidents like it, Congressman, but that specific incident involved the USS Omaha, the littoral combat ship of the U.S. Navy operating off Southern California. I don't remember the exact date. It was within the last decade. And what the watchstanders on the bridge observed was a UAP, again, something that was aloft but had no observable exhaust or control surfaces. So it was something that couldn't be explained. And then they saw it enter the water from the atmosphere and going through the air-sea interface, and so thus exhibiting transmedium travel.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Mr. Grothman for 5 minutes of questioning.
Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Gallaudet. During a previous UAP hearing, Navy Commander David Fravor discussed the TikTok object engaged in 2004. Are you familiar with the incident, the TikTok incident?
Yes, sir.
That's almost 20 years ago, right?
Yes, sir.
It's been said there are more videos, documents, and reports related to this incident. Do you believe the information regarding the TikTok incident should be available to all members of Congress? And in your expertise, what reason would the Department of Defense possibly have for not releasing information that's over 20 years old?
Thank you, Congressman. I don't think there's any good reason to withhold information and important data, especially of national security concern, from Congress.
What would they say?
I will speculate, sir, that they don't want to share that kind of information because it reveals weaknesses in our ability to monitor and protect our airspace.
Okay. In your written testimony, you claim last year's UAP hearing before this Oversight Committee confirmed that UAP-related information is, well, it's not only being withheld, but that elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Could you elaborate on that statement a little?
Yes, sir. Earlier this year, I met with the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and what I thought would be a 90-minute meeting just to meet with leadership turned out to be an hours-long influence operation on me, where they attempted to convince me of the validity of the very flawed and error-ridden historical records report. In addition, they tried to have me question very valid UAP reports like the Tic Tac incident, and even coming to stating possibly that the Tic Tac was American technology. And then, of course, if you ask David Fravor or Alex Dietrich,
options, achieving your dream smile has never been easier.
I'm going live later on too, y'all. I just wanted to still stream this and share it. This is Congress having a hearing on the UAP, the recent UFO sightings, you know what I mean?
Hope I got that right, or not at least
Close
not
enough,
that
sir.
wrong. You're familiar with the recent drone incursion over Langley Air Force Base?
Yes, sir.
The owners of these drones remain unclear. The U.S. military has not been able to give us in Congress an answer. Given your experience with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, how frequently are UAP sightings over military installations? And secondly, I suppose hypothetically, you could have incursions over just, say, regular airports. Is it obvious these incursions are more likely over military facilities than just a random airport out there?
Yes, sir. There's definitely enough data to suggest that there is certainly some sort of relationship between sensitive U.S. military installations, also some of our nuclear equities, and also some of our Department of Energy sites. There is a long historical record that some of your colleagues may have, documentation that demonstrates this. This is not a new trend. This has been going on for decades, and that information has been obfuscated, unfortunately, from folks like you in this committee. And I think that's problematic because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a significant situation here. We have something that can enter into U.S. airspace completely with no attribution.
And how long has this been going on?
Sir, decades. And there's information that will hopefully be entered into the
Can you
record.
think of any possible reason why they can't release any information they have on something, say, 15 or 20 years old?
Sir, if I could echo my colleague here, Admiral Gallaudet, I think one of the big issues that we have in the intelligence community, Department of Defense, is we don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities or weaknesses in our national defense systems or on intelligence collection platforms. Therefore, when you have a conversation where you address a problem for which there is no solution, it makes that a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
Okay, we'll switch to Mr. Schellenberger. The primary reason you're here today is because you published an article on the news publication that you own called Public, right? Alleging that a new unnamed government whistleblower has come forward asserting that a highly classified program exists dedicated to recovery and reverse engineering of UAP technologies. Can you give us what specific evidence you have or that your source provided you to substantiate the claims about the existence of the Immaculate Constellation program?
Well, you have the report in front of you now, so you can see it for yourself. I checked the report, and I did not find it based on existing cases. It was new cases for me. I hadn't found anybody. So that answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in this space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source. So yeah, and then of course I checked to make sure that the source was who they claimed to be.
Okay.
I should also say that when I said before it was this database, it is a much broader program than that. It also includes human intelligence, and then, as you mentioned, the retrieval and the reversal.
Any knowledge of what country these things originated in?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay, I will now recognize Mr. Burchett for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I request unanimous consent to enter into the record documents provided to us regarding legacy UAP programs and psychological operations. Lou Elizondo.
So ordered.
I also want to thank my buddy Jeremy Corbell for providing us documents and access to some whistleblowers. Mr. Elizondo, what is your last position with the federal government?
Sir, I was the Director of National Program Special Management Staff managing a White House Special Access Program on behalf of the National Security Council.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
Are there classified Department of Defense materials related to UAPs that you believe could be safely disclosed to the public without compromising national security?
Yes, sir, I do. I would never, ever try to endorse providing some sort of information that could compromise what we call a blue force technology or capability. But I do believe there's a lot of information regarding this topic, and I've been very vocal about it, that should be shared not only with the public, but most importantly, with members of Congress.
Are you familiar with my friend David Grush?
Absolutely, sir. I had the privilege and honor of working with him myself several years ago at U.S. Space Force.
Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that. And a lot of people are frustrated with those kind of answers, but we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against. You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as a singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
Sir, that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets in order to discredit this topic. I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again, and it turns out that that individual was also working with former leadership of Arrow at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year. Admiral Gallaudet, you mentioned in your opening statement on an email you received from the operations officer of the Fleet Forces Command regarding unknown objects almost colliding with U.S. military planes. Did anyone respond with knowledge of what the objects were?
I received no response, sir.
Did the exercise get canceled?
The exercise did not get canceled.
Why do you think the commander of Fleet Forces operations officer never discussed the incident again?
Sir, I'm speculating because I didn't have an exchange with him, but I believed it to be part of a special access program, the information and the video, which we have known now it was, and he realized he couldn't share that openly with the recipients of the email, and therefore the email was pulled from everybody's account.
Again, tell us what happened to the email from the commander of Fleet Forces.
The day after I received it, and all the other recipients received it, which were all the subordinate commanders of U.S. Fleet Forces, so 1- and 2-star admirals, including strike group commanders, the email was...
In other news, a 2025 DOGE-inspired initiative is causing a stir with the release of a viral Trump survivor coin, receiving strong negative reaction videos from liberals nationwide. Starting today, Trump supporters can claim this historic gold coin for free, as long as they
on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of, and technology-wise, could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater, so I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay. Have you experienced any experience with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW?
Yes, Congressman, as I mentioned previously, I have met with them.
Okay. You heard Mr. Elizondo describe psychological operations for those contacting the Department of Defense about UAPs. You mentioned a similar influence operation by ARROW. Why are federal agencies invested in running information operations about UAPs if they do not exist?
Yes, sir. But I'll make a statement on ARROW's behalf. They have new leadership. The office has reached out to me to meet again, and I take that as a good faith effort, and we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I've run over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tennessee. I would now like to recognize Mr. Higgins. You're the king of Tennessee. Mr. Higgins, you're recognized for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Elizondo, Mr. Schellenberger notes in the report that we've been given for this hearing. I believe, Mr. Schellenberger, let me shift you, the author of this report.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm not the author.
Mr. Schellenberger, were you the author of this report? There's
No, I was
no name
not.
on it.
No.
Do you know the author?
I do.
You do. And how would you estimate that madam or gentleman, the author?
The person is a current or former U.S. government employee.
And it states here that this is the public version of the author's report.
Yes.
So where might one find the non-public version of the author's report?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would that be with the Department of Defense?
I don't know.
But you do know the author.
I do.
You know what the author's sources were?
The author's sources are described in the report. These databases, the Immaculate Constellation.
Right, but
program.
you expressed some confidence in the sources
I would.
earlier in
I do.
testimony. You expressed confidence. So do you know those sources?
I do.
Are they within the Department of Defense?
I can't say.
You can't say or you won't say?
I won't say.
Okay, why not?
Because I protect my sources, and I think the reason.
But you're not naming them. It's a big department. But many of us on my side of the aisle would say it's far too big. So you're talking about the Department of Defense, sources from within the Department of Defense?
I'm not willing to reduce the
Okay.
potential universe of where my sources might be.
Okay, moving on. In this report, Mr. Elizondo, for reference, several types of allegedly alien craft or possibly alien craft or unknown aerial phenomena, what we used to call UFOs, are described. Spheres and orbs, discs and saucers, oval or tic-tac, triangular shape, boomerang and arrowhead, and irregular or organic. Mr. Elizondo, does that summarize to you the types of craft that we're discussing today?
Sir, that is a general morphology, historically speaking, of many UAP.
So those descriptions are very different craft. Is it your assessment that they would come of different origins?
It's possible, but it's also could be a matter of utility. And let me just state for the record, I never read the report that or the article that Mr. Schellenberger put out. The reason
That's a good point. We're just referencing it.
Yes, sir.
For descriptive purposes for the American people. Mr. Schellenberger, in this report, it's striking to me that regarding the descriptions of experiences with these various craft, several of them include biological effects and several do not. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so spheres and orbs, triangular craft, and irregular or organic craft include some descriptions of biological effects, including feelings of unease, electronic device malfunctions, long-term psychological effects such as anxiety or insomnia have been noted, feeling of being watched, a shared awareness with the triangle craft, and under the irregular and orological effects include physical sensations of warmth or cold and unexplained smells and psychological distress. So these are very specific descriptions of the reactions of human beings, which allegedly have been noted from a study here, a report. All of those experiences would have been described by the sources that the author used.
I'm not sure I understand.
This is a very broad description of biological effects, and it's striking to me that they are present with relation to some types of craft, but
Right.
absent in others. This would require a great deal of research and study. Can you explain that?
My understanding is that this is the database is very large.
There are quesadillas, and then there's Zaxby's giant chicken finger quesadillas, packed with their famous chicken fingers, cheese.
Intelligence, the reports, the raw data from individuals having these experiences. So in answer to your question, yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at a very large amount of data collected over many decades.
And that data is held by the Department of Defense?
Well, I will say that after I published, I was told that this program, that the USAP was actually managed by the Department of Defense, but held at the White House.
Roger
But
that.
that's a single source, and I don't have multiple sources to verify that.
Thank you, sir. I did my
Report
best
live,
to
y'all.
try to
Scoob
answer
News. congressional
partially
hearing about the
successful.
recent
Madam Chair, I
UAP
yield.
sightings.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Frost for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair.